Hello, my friends! Today we're going to draw a beautiful oak leaf together. Oak leaves have such elegant, wavy shapes and are a true symbol of strength and the cozy spirit of autumn. This is a short, sped-up version, just a little glimpse of my full drawing process. If you'd like to explore it in more detail, you can find the full-length tutorial on my Patreon. And don't worry, I'll guide you step by step, making it easy and relaxing to follow along. So, let's get started! Alright, now let's get started with the actual drawing. First, I want to define the area where my leaf will be placed. I adjust and slightly transform the line here and there, but overall, this is how I shape the basic form. Once we've completed the rough sketch, let's refine our lines and outline the leaf. I start at the bottom and go over the lines with slightly firmer pressure, creating a neater and more defined edge. Now let's move on to drawing the inner veins. I start by adding some thickness to the central midrib, and then I draw the additional veins branching out from the central toward the edge of the loop. Just look at a real oak leaf. You can see that many small side veins branch out from the central veins. I think before we start shading, it's a good idea to sketch these side veins as well. This will help us later in the process. Now the linear is completely ready. The next step is to add short strokes from the central vein out toward the edge. I keep the pressure light and place the strokes very close together. This way, we'll build up shading around each main vein. I'll start with the central vein and then move on to the side veins. Here, we only shade on one side of each vein, unlike the central vein, where we shaded both sides. Alright, the overall shape of the leaf is ready. Now it's time to work on the edge, the leaf's counter. I use small, short strokes to create tiny folds or waves along the edge, making it as neat as possible. At this stage, I also want to show you something else. See, along the leaf's edge, we can clearly see a slight thickness, like a little light stripe. I thought we could add this thickness to the leaf as well. So now I carefully go around each loop of the leaf and draw a small thickness. Let's repeat this process for each loop of the leaf, adding thickness first and then the little folds along the edge. Alright, look, we've already detailed all these edges of the leaf, as well as all the veins. Now, let's add overall volume to the leaf. To do this, I'll make one half of the leaf a bit darker, while keeping the other half lighter. While doing this, I make sure the central vein still stands out by keeping its tone slightly lighter, so it doesn't get lost. Next, I move to the side veins. Here, I add shading to each half of the vein. And as you can see, at this stage, I'm adding tone under each loop of the leaf to simulate more volume. Alright, we've fully drawn the leaf and now it's time to add the details. Just look at all these tiny veins. They run through every part of the leaf. Since there are so many veins, I begin with the larger ones first and then gradually add smaller and smaller veins. I usually work from bigger to smaller veins, trying to place them randomly. I start sketching them from the central midrib out over the edge, filling the space with these neat, tiny veins. After adding the medium-sized veins, I randomly add some texture in between. Here, I am not drawing any specific pattern. I'm just making little random swirls with the pencil to mimic the leaf structure. When we step back and look at the drawing, this creates the illusion of detailed veins and makes the leaf look more realistic. So, let's recap the whole process. First, sketch the larger veins from the midrib, then add smaller veins from them, and finally fill in random textures with chaotic strokes. Now, let's do the same for every part of the leaf. Alright, look, we've drawn the texture of the entire leaf, but at this stage it still looks a bit flat. Let's add the final touches and more realism. Here and there we can add imperfections, deepen some areas, and slightly lighten others. I want to introduce more randomness, realism, and imperfect details so the leaf feels more two-dimensional. As you can see, I'm darkening the areas near the central vein and side veins and in between the loops. So I'm applying the final strokes, darkening some areas and highlighting others, and refining the edge with small, careful details to complete the leaf and make it look lively and realistic. Great, look, we've completely finished drawing the oak leaf. I think it turned out really well and looks quite realistic. When I looked at references, of course, I'm not copying a photo or real leaf exactly, but I tried to make it more expressive and visually appealing in graphite. Let me show you the texture up close. See how I tried to capture it? With graphite, you can detail the texture almost endlessly, but at some point, it's important to stop and finish the work. I hope you enjoyed drawing along with me. It's been such a cozy autumn adventure with leaves. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more nature-inspired art. See you next time and happy drawing! Bye bye!